Welcome back. This is Ken Rethmeier, and this is the sixth episode of the Leading for Value podcast that I've been developing using the book I published a few years ago entitled Leading for Value as the resource and foundation for this information. And as I mentioned before, I consider it a real honor and privilege to be able to pass this information along to you. The concepts, the models that I created over 50 years of work, and all the tools that go with the models that will help you become better leaders. And that's my purpose. It's not about my career. My career is done. That happened a long time ago. But now it's my opportunity to give back. And that's what I try to do. And in this particular episode, we're going to be looking at the same issues, vision, current reality, and the tension between the two. But instead of looking at the force field analysis approach, we're going to use critical business issues and critical business opportunities as the context for this particular session. And I think what you'll find is that you will see, again, opportunities how you as a leader can take these tools to your organization. And it's not applicable to any particular industry. I have to keep mentioning that. The book is oriented around healthcare, but my own experience in work came from 22 years in the Navy, 4 corporate episodes involving financial services, healthcare, and then starting my own consulting practice at a rather ripe age, and continuing on consulting in healthcare, financial services, the oil industry. I had a great group of people that I work with there, and other organizations such as the American Association of Medical Colleges, some for-profits, not-for-profits. And as a consequence, it gave me an opportunity to build a lot of my own thinking about this, and then teaching healthcare management in 7 of the Eastern European countries, and doing now consulting and other kinds of educational development for leaders in particular Romania and Maastricht through the Department of International Health at Maastricht University. So in this particular episode, we're going to be talking about issues and opportunities in current reality. And one thing I need to start off and sort of caution you about, even though it may look like an issue, there may be something you can do to turn that issue around and make it an opportunity. It's just like sometimes when we make mistakes, it's a learning process, and we learn from those mistakes and we can move forward. And the methodology that we're going to use is the same kind that we did for force field analysis, using group facilitated discussions, collecting the thinking, presenting that thinking to the rest of the groups that are assembled, and then using that as a building block or building blocks to gain leverage and outcomes to energize the teams, organizations to work even harder moving towards that vision. I guarantee you that these tools work. I've used them many, many times myself, some of which I actually created. And so for everybody that's watching this, the idea is to see what kind of insight you gain from this kind of productive dialogue that you're watching, and then evaluating how you might be able to turn these tools into your own work environment. So as the setup, it's best to have subgroups, just like we did before, 4 to 6 people. You don't want it to get too big, because those people who have a preference for introversion will sit quietly and not participate like you want them to. So you want those sessions to be an opportunity to give them the context of how you see your organization or your company, and how you see the environment that you're in, both internal and external, affecting your work. And it's not just you. You want them to understand and take ownership so that they're part of the whole process. And I would recommend that if you can sort of give them some examples of what you think those definitions mean for critical business issues and opportunities, that would help them to sort of begin thinking about what ideas they come up with. And you want them to be open and willing to ask questions. So during the time they're doing their own subgroup work, if they have a problem or a question for clarification, make sure they know that they need to ask. And like we did before, we're going to try to achieve an agreement at the end of the day, if you will, so that everybody sees the same kind of opportunities that can be pursued to turn around and mitigate those business issues, but then leverage the business opportunities to work in a very positive fashion. So remember, some of the items that you're going to hear are not going to be industry specific. So for example, in healthcare right now, one of the biggest critical business issues is the lack and the shortage of nursing personnel. And that comes out of the pandemic and the overworked staff that work day and night, and a lot of burnout. A lot of nurses decided they wanted to retire and just not come back. And even today, in some organizations, I know some hospitals where I am nearby, that the waiting time in the ER to get a bed can be delayed dramatically because they don't have enough nursing staff. But on the other hand, there will be other critical business issues that cut across all types of industries. And in some cases, if you have somebody bring up one that's in another industry, say, let's talk about that. How might that kind of thinking and that kind of issue apply to our environment? And what can we learn from that? This is a very, very important part of the whole process. And obviously, it's about the environmental and government regulations. We're seeing that more and more. And you need to be able to identify, because some of those are going to be things you can't control. And you don't want to try to be pursuing things you can't control. You want to pursue those things you can control and make a difference. In fact, I'm going to have an exercise in 1 or 2 episodes upcoming that will be that very issue of can and cannot control. And then also the other thing that will be interesting to see what kind of parallels are similar in the not-for-profit industries as well as the for-profit industries, and to explore those so you get a better understanding, because you might learn something rather interesting. And obviously, one of the key areas is who are your stakeholders? Because they're the ones that are going to have a significant impact on your performance and your ability to link in and pursue the excellence that you're trying to achieve. So for that purpose, that sort of sets the stage for what the groups are going to do. And what you want to do is make sure that the exercises give them an opportunity to foster a productive dialogue. And that means everybody gets involved. And that the real issue here is when you look at your critical business issues, and we want them to rank order critical business issues and critical business opportunities in such a way that it gives you as a leader a better opportunity to see, where do I really have an opportunity to make a change? That in the CBIs, if they're not resolved, they will adversely affect you, your management team, and your entire organization's performance. And those could be both internal and external. Conversely, critical business opportunities, if they are not seized, you're missing an opportunity. You're missing a chance to increase your revenue, your profits, and competitive advantage. And somewhere along the line, I'm going to tell you a little bit about some experiences I had with the old Wachovia Bank and the retail branch executives, and how they took a look at their own work and discovered that they were missing some opportunities that they weren't taking advantage of, and we helped them to open up their eyes to that. That'll come for another time. And the whole idea here is that you want your management team to grow. You want them to become closer to you, want them to facilitate and really exercise their critical thinking, their creativity, and innovation. That's a very important part of this whole process. And you never know, something is going to come up. And when it does, you'll be very surprised and very, very pleased. I guarantee it. So here's the bottom line. I have some thoughts for you for your consideration. And that is, let's pretend you're in a room at a building. You're on the first floor. There are 3 floors. There are no windows. You can't see the 3rd floor. There's 1 light bulb, and you're standing next to 3 switches. And the challenge is this: for you to go up, turn on one of those switches, and figure out which is the right one that will turn that light on. But here's the hitch. You can only go to the 3rd floor one time. How do you know which switch you should turn on to turn that light on? This is an opportunity for your own critical thinking and creativity, and think about it. Sometimes when we're in business, and I've seen this before in my consulting in numerous occasions, we tend to look so far forward and so outward that we fail to look at the steps right in front of us, the short view. And as a consequence, what happens is something might be very obvious, but we don't see it. And that's the case of this particular little exercise. Here's the solution. You turn on one of the 3 switches, you leave it on for 5 minutes, then you turn it off. Then you turn on one of the other 2 switches, and then go immediately to the 3rd floor. Here's the response. If the light's on, as I say there, well, guess what? You picked the right one, the first one. But here's the catch. If it's off and it's warm, then it was the first one. If it's off and it's cold, then the remaining switch is the right one. What's the answer to this? We fail to remember. We think about light coming on and off, and we see it. But light bulbs generate heat. And so the key to the answer to this is when you turn that one on for 5 minutes and then turn it off. When you go upstairs, if it's off and warm, it was the first one, so forth and so on. So when you are in your teams and you're watching how they operate and how they think, always wonder, have they missed something? Have we overlooked something? And if we have, how do we fix it? And how do we move forward? I can tell you that I had a neighbor many, many years ago who worked for a laboratory. And he was a business development person. And he met a guy, he was sort of like the crazy professor. And he had a patent. And Gene said, I think this is very important. So he went to the company and said, I think we ought to buy the patent. I think we can develop it. He tried that 3 times. Didn't work. So he said, okay, I'm buying the patent and I'm going to develop it. And believe it or not, that guy bought the patent for what is now known as Microban. I'm sure you've seen it. It's an antimicrobial that's embedded in, first, children's toys so they wouldn't get sick, so forth and so on. Let's put it this way. He doesn't live in that old neighborhood anymore, and he's done quite well. But see, his company didn't see the obvious, and he did. So I want to thank you for your time today and your opportunity to see this particular perspective. And I look forward to seeing you in episode 7. And just a little hint, there's going to be another opportunity for a chance to look at current reality in a different fashion. Thank you. Come back. I'll see you again.